All right, how you guys doing today? Awesome. All right, well, my name is Jeremy, and I am the account manager lead with the managed services team at Seller Labs. If you have been a part of the Seller Labs community for a while, you may have watched a video or a webinar hosted by somebody known as PPC Ed. This next speaker has often described himself as an all-around advertising nerd, and he's not wrong. But he's worked with the managed service team at Seller Labs for almost 3 years now, helping clients get the most out of their advertising on Amazon. So please put your hands together on welcoming Edward Ruffin.
Hey guys, how's it going? So yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy is actually one of the original account managers for the managed services team that I have been with for a long time now. So he took a lot of weight off my shoulders, which was awesome, to not just be the only person working with a lot of accounts. We also have some other people in the house tonight too. We got Brett, who's the other account director just like me. We have Will, and then Cameron too. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. If I am, I'm sorry guys, but we'll have more tomorrow too. So if you see me talking with some other people at Seller Labs, jump in. A lot of times they're people that I work with on a daily basis. We're all around nerds when it comes to PPC, and we're okay with that. And today we're actually gonna dive into something that I do on a daily basis. Brett and I, we are responsible for new clients when they first come to our service. And that has a lot of steps involved in it. Some of them are very boring and very tedious, I won't tell you those. But one of them is developing a strategy for the client. Not just like a run-of-the-mill strategy, but one that is for their business. It's personalized. We understand what their goals are. We understand what they want to do with their advertising. So we have to develop a strategy just for them. So today, we're going to talk about using successful ad strategies that scale. Thinking about the future, building up a strategy for your advertising on Amazon that you don't have to worry about for a while. You still have to optimize it, of course, and Brett will talk about that next. But this is one of the most important steps in advertising. You can't have successful ads if you have a terrible strategy. And I want everyone, after this, to say, this is corny, I'm sorry, honey, I shrunk the ACoS. Okay, it was an idea. Yeah, you can talk to me afterwards about it if you want to. So what we're going to go over strategies both big and small. No matter how big your business is, how long it's been around, strategies vary, and that's okay. Don't be afraid by that. We're going to look at some examples that we've actually seen in the real world about the 3 types of main strategies I'm going to talk about. And then we're also going to see if there is such a thing as a bad strategy. And I'll go ahead and say the answer is yes. Sorry if that's a spoiler. You should know there are bad strategies. There's terrible strategies. And if you're doing one of the bad strategies that I talk about today, that's okay. I'm not calling anybody out, but it's just I want people to understand why you may want to do something different. And we can also talk about this in more depth afterwards. We can talk about why you're doing that strategy or why you should do something different too. So first, strategies big and small. Like I said, every Amazon business is different. You can be selling the same product as someone else. You sourced it from the same place. Your business may be different because you have a different goal from the other person. That's okay. That's kind of expected. Everybody's different. Every business is different. So there are always going to be different ways to group products together. And there's 3 ways to talk about today that have some advantages and some things that are kind of cons about them too. But I want to give you a demonstration of how you can use these and how you need to find the one that works best for you and your business. Because, simply put, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all strategy. And I hate to say it, guys, but that's very true. I have seen a lot of people come to us after doing advertising themselves or seeing other people talk to them about it or taking some classes or even having someone else run it for them completely. And their advertising is failing because they tried to do a strategy that someone else came up with or someone else used or their friend used, and they're like, hey, I'll just apply that to my account and it should work fine. It's not like that, guys. Like, it's okay to be different. Embrace being different. That's what I do. I try to, at least. So sorry, it's true. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all strategy. Even if you use one of these strategy ideas that we have, you'll have to really augment it some to fit your business. And if you use the appropriate strategy when it comes to advertising, the biggest result of that is it's easier to find wasted ad spend, which can lead to you lowering your ACoS or shrinking your ACoS. Get it? Because that's the title. It's a stretch, I'm sorry. But so that is, I told you, I will take it. I am a nerd. You should hear the normal jokes I do. Brett can attest to how much, dad jokes, and I'm not married or anything. So the biggest goal of having a strong strategy is finding wasted ad spend easily. Because if you have a good strategy, you can dive into it, you can find out what's working and what's not working. You don't have to sludge through all this muck and just really hope for the best. And always remember, having a strong campaign structure is the first step to success when it comes to PPC. What's so funny? It's 2019, I said it. I don't know what date I said it, so it's circa, okay. Oh, you're gonna love this. So we had to see exactly how these strategies work with accounts. So Brett and I came together in a whole nother dimension, and we actually made our own business. So we could test these strategies, look at how we would build them out, see how they would really look with products inside of them. And we called it HEISENBERG Industrial Scientific Solutions. And as you can see, we tested out the products. We made sure they worked. We understood what their use was. But once again, this is another dimension. That's not really me right there. So this allowed us to really get some real-world examples of how these strategies may work and how they should look. And the 3-minute approaches are going to be category, family, and granular. And simply put, category, grouping things by category, family, grouping things by product family, and then granular is pretty much a singular approach for each product. And I'm going to go into these in more depth, but this is the main of the 3 approaches that I've seen in the real world. There's different variations of each of these, and that's okay. Like I said, if you're using the granular approach, there may be hundreds of thousands of different ways to do this approach. So let's take a look. So the category approach is the first one. And the category approach is one that I see a lot of people doing when they don't have as much time to optimize. It's a more broad approach. You're looking at things down to a category. What that means is you're advertising all the variations of a product category together in one campaign. Not just one product, but a category of products. So it's going to mix together products that have similarities or they have a keyword overlap. If the same types of keywords may show up for these products whenever you're doing, or you're looking through your search results, you're looking at your listing itself. So you group all those products together and you make a category out of that. And an example with our awesome business is something like this. So there's the Erlenmeyer flask and a cell culture flask. They're both completely different products. They don't do the same thing, as far as I know. And they have one similarity, though. You'll see that they're flask. So if I, as a business owner, want to see how my flask are performing and see what type of traffic they have, see how they're converting as a whole, I might use this approach. And it will look something like this. I think y'all will get the slides too, so you can see this later on as well. But for the auto-targeting campaign, if you're doing this by category, you'll have one campaign that's advertising all your flask together. But you can still have these broken out by ad group. So you can still see how your Erlenmeyer flask are performing and then how your cell culture flask are performing as well. But at a glance, since they're all grouped together, the metrics from that campaign at the top level are showing how those flasks are performing all together. And this is pretty cool. But you'll notice in the Erlenmeyer flask, all the variations are in one ad group. So they kind of, they blend together. And when you go to the manual campaign, same way. I'll touch on this later, but our approach is always have an auto and a manual. Always have them be mirroring. Because by mirroring campaigns, it's easier to find out where those strong search terms go. I'll say that again later on. If you didn't catch it, it's fine. But you're already noticing that this is a very broad approach. This is a cool idea, if I really want to focus on all my flasks together and see how they're performing, I might do this. So that leads to the pros of grouping by category. It allows you to be granular to some degree while still monitoring how a whole entire category is performing. Plain and simple. I can see how my flasks are performing at a glance. If I don't have time to really dig into an account, I can just sort by ACoS and say, oh man, my flasks have the highest ACoS out of all the categories that I'm advertising. I need to really jump in that. Then I know where I need to put my focus instead. And it does also show you which products provide the best return in that category. Let's see if I can go back. So you'll see, since I have an ad group that has all my Erlenmeyer flask in there, I can see at a glance once again that they're providing the most traffic for my flask campaign. So those are the pros of it. Now the cons, you're not able to really compensate for unique differences in the products. If it's the volumes of it, or the sizes, or the colors, or just different variations, you can't really do that as much. Because your search terms may drive traffic to the wrong variation because you're still grouping together those variations into one ad group. So for instance, someone may search for 125 milliliters and then they get an ad for the 500 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask instead. Once again, sorry, we chose the weirdest examples, Brett, because these are just all scientific terms, I'm realizing that. You're also unable to control your campaigns as well because negations get tricky. Because you have to remember, if you set a negative at an ad group level, it's going to affect every variation that's inside that ad group. And that can lead to some products just not showing up anymore because you negated a term, and that term usually works well with it, but didn't work well for another variation. So it gets tricky with some of the optimization. It still can be done. This is still one of the best ways to look at a category level, what's working. Next, we get to the family approach. And by the way, this picture, I couldn't find a good picture from the movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This is actually from the TV show, which I did not know existed. Definitely different actors, but I know nothing about it. So the family approach goes a little more in depth. The family approach, you do separate campaigns for each product family. So you're not looking at just like a category level, you're looking at a product family level instead. So you include all the variations of a product in a campaign. And that way, just at a glance, I can see how this product is performing. At the campaign level, I see how it's doing, see how much I'm spending, what the return is, the click-through rate, everything at that product level. So to show an example of this with HIS, Heisenberg Industrial Scientific Solutions, we have a lot of different variations of our Erlenmeyer flask. We actually have multiple listings of it, and some of them have all the different variations on one listing. So I want to advertise all the Erlenmeyer flasks at the same time. I'm going to do something like this. I advertise the whole product family together inside of one campaign. So no longer is this just a flask campaign. Instead, I broke that out to where it's an Erlenmeyer flask campaign by itself. And in this example, I still have all the variations grouped together in one ad group. And if you're a huge PPC nerd like me, you know that can lead to problems, and I'll get to that. But the benefit of this one is, at a glance, I can see how my product family is performing at a whole. I can see how all the variations combined are doing when it comes to the sales, the traffic, and really just how much I'm spending. I don't have to dig into a category campaign anymore. I can just look at just the product family level. And once again, same thing here, guys. Have an auto and a manual that looks exactly the same. This is really always our approach. Now the pros of this, like I said, you can see how a family of products is performing at a glance. You can do the same thing. You can sort these by ACoS if you wanted to. And you can see, okay, man, my Erlenmeyer flask is just spending way too much. I need to pull that down. Then I can dig into it and find out exactly which variation is, not doing the best, but that is trickier. And it shows you which products provide the best return in your catalog, so kind of on that same end. I can know at a glance, looking inside my Seller Central or inside of Ignite, which campaigns are working the best, which ones are getting the most sales. Oh, that's one of my top performing family of products. I love that. That's cool. And then the cons. Your keywords will cross over a lot of times between variations. If I have 125 milliliters and 500 milliliters and 1,000 all in one ad group, those keywords are going to cross because Amazon does some type of optimization to drive traffic to the right listing, but sometimes it's off. So if I have all those in one ad group together inside of one campaign, someone searches for the 125, they may get the 500 served to them. And same thing for here with the 500 milliliter flask may be shown when a 200 milliliter search term is served. So it makes it harder to see exactly which variation is converting the best without digging into it. Because you're looking at a product family together. You're not looking at singular cells for one particular variation. You're looking at them grouped together. So it makes it harder to see which size of this flask is doing the best. And that's where we come to my favorite approach. And this is something that our team, the managed services team, is going more towards, the granular approach. We also just call it SKU-based ad groups. If you want to sound really nerdy and cool, that's how you say it. And this is a little more intense, but it's awesome. Because what you do is ad groups are all based on singular ASINs or SKUs. So one product per ad group is what we usually do. And most of the time, we just do one campaign. And this is like, oh, never just do one campaign, it's crazy. Well, you can now. Because you can have one campaign that has an ad group for every individualized product. And you'll see why this is so cool. We'll go back to HIS. I just love saying HIS, apparently. Our catalog is extensive. We have so many different types of beakers, flasks, and cylinders. So we didn't really want to have a lot of product family campaigns or even just really large category campaigns. We wanted something like this. And like I said, this is actually real world. This is what we normally do nowadays. We have one granular auto-targeting campaign that includes every product of our catalog. You don't have to do just one campaign. You can have a couple campaigns if you want to break it out just for optimization-wise. But we have one ad group, and we just named the ad group the SKU, or the ASIN if you're doing ASIN-based instead. We just have the ad group name be HISS dish, and that's the name of the ad group, and it just includes one product, which is the same SKU. So it's just an easy way to really know what's in there. And the best part about this is the search terms that come through this are relating back to just that one product. So you no longer have to guess which product does this search term go to. It's all broken out for you right here. So you have an auto-targeting, then you have a manual the same exact way. And the benefit of this is, if you see a term that's performing awesome in the auto-targeting campaign, you can move it right over to the manual because they are set up the exact same way. You don't have to dig and find out where the other product is in the manual targeting campaigns. You have them mirrored just like this, so you can find it in the auto and move it right over to the manual. And this gives you the most granular data I've ever seen in my life. It's really awesome. And some of the pros, even though I've kind of already said a lot of them, allows you to see in exact detail which products are converting. Not families of products, not categories, but actually individualized products, which ones are converting. Because you can go into that campaign and you can see at the ad group level which one's working the best. And keywords and search terms are going back to one product as opposed to a group of products. Once again, I know exactly what works for this product now. I don't have to apply the same keyword to all these different types of products and hope that it converts correctly. And it makes it so easy to migrate terms from auto to manual. That was actually one of the main reasons why we switched over to this. Instead of having to find the right campaign and move it, it's just one-to-one, exactly the same. Now there are still cons, there are. It does take more time to optimize. Just because you're going through ad group by ad group to find out what's working, what's not working. But since we're a full team and we use Ignite as well, it does save time. And it's also just making sure that you're on a cadence to where you can optimize and you can just go through at the same time every week and then you're set. And that's actually what Brett's going to talk about next as well. And it does provide a lot of data. But for someone like me, it makes me drool. I love it. And so for us, that's actually a pro, because you have a lot of data that you can really sift into and see what's working, what's not working, negate at the ad group level, move things over with ease. And that's why we're moving a lot of our clients over to this system. But there are some clients that this doesn't work for. They want to see more at a category level what works, or at a group of products what works. We have to use the other types of strategies instead. So once again, the three main approaches are category, family, and granular. And now we get to the good stuff. Bad strategies. This is like awesome stuff. And I like what he's saying here. I just think I'm more responsible than most people. I feel like that's how we feel now, since we've seen so many bad strategies. We've tried out some bad strategies ourselves. I'll be honest, we're not perfect. But now we're responsible to know, let's never do that again. So, you may have heard, I have 10 auto-targeting campaigns running for each product. So we've actually found out you should have 500 auto-targeting campaigns running for each product. I'm just kidding, guys. That's terrible. Don't, no. So this is a bad strategy. And once again, if you're doing this, do not be embarrassed. If you're doing 500 auto-targeting campaigns for one product, though, please come talk to me. We need to have a heart-to-heart. But it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Like, we've all tried things to see what kind of data we can get from it. We're just trying to mine for data in the best way possible. But this is bad because you're splitting impressions. And it makes it harder for you to know what's actually working. If you have multiple campaigns running for the same product, you may get 500 impressions on the search term over here, and then the same search term in another campaign gets 600, and you're like, okay, math, let's see, 500 and 600, it's 1,100, okay, that's pretty good. It's a waste of time to go through that. And it takes you longer to make an educated guess, or decision, as you want to call them, because you need data to understand what's working and what's not working. If you're splitting your data, you're getting very small amounts of data in a lot of different places. There's not really an advantage to this. There's just really not. It's just splitting everything up, and it's harder to really understand where your money's going and what's being served and how certain products are advertised. It's not a good idea. Something else you may have also heard, I just make a giant catch-all campaign, and they work fine. It's a bad strategy. So when you have a giant catch-all, unless you have it broken out in such a way like we did, like with the singular ad group, singular product per ad group, it increases the chance that the wrong product will be showed to someone when they're searching for something. So if I have my apples and my oranges, I don't sell those on Amazon. If I have those advertised in the same campaign, there's a chance that someone searches for an apple and an orange shows up. And maybe they clicked on it, and you have to pay for a click that led to a conversion that was never going to happen. Like, they're just not going to buy that product. And it's also harder to direct traffic to a particular listing. Because if you have a catch-all, you may have this awesome keyword that works for this one product. You put it in there, there's a pretty good chance it's not going to really go to just that product. It's going to go to everything else. And how do you optimize this? It's a lot harder. This takes the most time to optimize because you're trying to make sure that you're not taking things out that works for one product but doesn't work for another one. So you have to really dig in there and see what you can do. And a lot of times you can't do much. And another one, I only run auto campaigns. This is one of the most common ones that we've seen. Once again, if you're doing it, it's fine. But it's still a bad strategy. Because you're missing out. Man, you're missing out so much, because we use auto-targeting campaigns to find out exactly, first of all, if Amazon knows what our product is. Amazon looks at your listing, they analyze it, and they drive traffic for search terms that they kind of mine from your listing to find out, okay, cool, so this is in this listing, it must be this product, let's drive this search term over there. So we check the auto to find out what's working. It's also where we get a lot of our keywords, because we've seen in that auto that those search terms are working, We want those to be keywords in a manual targeting campaign. If I'm not running a manual targeting campaign, how do I get more competitive? How do I double down on the terms that are working? You can't. You can just raise your bid on the auto, so it's not a good idea to just do autos. You're also missing out on placements as well, and that goes back to bidding more. Autos can still get you placement on top of page search results, but you don't have the ability to be as competitive. With a manual targeted campaign, you can increase your bid. You can be more competitive to get that top of page placement if you want to. If you're converting best there, take advantage of that. And like I said, always have auto and manual targeting campaigns. This is one of the biggest things that I really can't reiterate enough. And just have them mirrored. Have them where it's one-to-one, where you have an auto and you have a manual targeting campaign set up the exact same way. That way, when you find out what's working in that auto targeting campaign, you can move it over to that correlated manual with ease. It's a lot harder if you have 35 autos and then one catch-all manual. It's just like you're just kind of throwing things in there. So have it as a one-to-one ratio, and that's just what we learned with that. And this one, I'm not calling anybody out, okay? I have a manual campaign that has 876 keywords that I added from a keyword generator. Once again, not calling anybody out. This is a tactic. You can still mine for keywords when you're doing, inside for keyword research, that's fine. But it's still a bad strategy to just do that. And when I say that it's just because you never want to put all your eggs in one basket. You never want to rely on just keywords that you found online, or you were just studying someone's listing. And we always rely on those terms from our auto-targeting campaign that have worked well. A lot of our research comes from us diving into those auto-targeting campaigns, finding out what's working, and doubling down on that inside the manual targeting campaign. That's where we get a lot of our research done. And keyword generators are awesome. They're great for research. They're great for finding out areas that you can really go into. I use one every day. I use Scope every day. I love Scope. But be intelligent with your approach. And you can still manually add keywords, especially if you know that they're going to work for you, if you have like a high ranking, if they're leading to a lot of traffic for another product as well or something like that, you can double down on that. But you don't ever really need to add hundreds of keywords at a time. It's just, it leads to a lot of potential for a high amount of wasted ad spend in a short amount of time. Because you're throwing all these keywords in there simultaneously, hoping that you're going to get good traffic. Then you have to go back and optimize for 876 keywords that you just put in there. If those are highly competitive keywords that have really high cost per clicks, you may have wasted hundreds of dollars in the span of a couple of days. So that's why we use our auto-targeting campaigns to make sure that we are focusing on the right terms that lead to the best conversions at the best cost, of course, too. Now, let's review. That's it. I have so many pictures of Rick Moranis. Like I had to scrape Google to find these. A lot of them are still like in that 80s like quality, like really grainy. So yeah. So first, always weigh your options. Like I said, there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all strategy. I wish there was. It made my job a lot easier, believe me. But that's part of the joy that I get out of it too. Because I have to work hard to find out what can I do for this client to make sure that he meets this goal of X, Y, and Z. I can try this one that we tried on with someone else, but that's a different category. The competition is fierce in this one. I can't risk wasting all that money right up front. And one thing, it's hard to say this enough, but use strategies that scale. And this isn't just scaling your strategies for if you're launching new products down the road, or if you're looking to really just increase your reach on advertising. When you're building out a strategy for PPC, don't do it for that week. Do it for that year if you can. Do it for the next 2 years. Set it up so then that way you can add products to that same strategy. Set it up so you can increase your spend and still be able to optimize it with ease. Don't make a mess. And then finally, think about optimization. Like I said, Our favorite approach is the granular approach, but it may not be perfect for everyone because we have the team behind it. We're all nerds. We love data. We're fine with digging into that every week. But that approach also does help us with the optimization. We thought about that. We're moving all these keywords over all the time, but we're wasting a lot of time trying to find where they're supposed to go. So that's why we switched over to that granular process, and we're looking to do that more and more as time goes on. And think about what's going to work best for you. If you're primarily focusing on like every category of products that you have, so you can see what's working best at a category level, go with a category approach. If you want to roll all your variations in together, the family approach may work best for you. There's thousands of more strategies out there, but these are the ones that I think I see the most and I understand how to use the most. So if you have any questions about any of these, corner me in the back of a room and talk to me about them. We're also going to have a panel later on about advertising that Brett will be on too. And I know we have a break coming up, and then Brett's going to be talking about optimization. And so he'll pick up from where I left off with the strategies. So
thank you,
Ed. You guys.
Awesome. So I got 5 minutes. I can do questions directly for Ed. The thing that I would say here is, the strategy we used a year ago has changed 3 or 4 times. So don't be afraid to say, the strategy's not working. I got to go try another one. Yeah. There's one thing I want to add to Edward's presentation, which is that there's a belief. You're too tall. No, stop. There's a belief in Amazon and advertising in general that says, I don't want to mess with my data. I've got all this data. I don't want to mess with it. If I mess with it, I'm going to mess with my campaigns, right? Do we all believe that?
No.
Yes? Who believes that? Yeah? Who does not believe that? Okay, so the answer is it depends. Okay, if you have a well-performing campaign, you don't want to mess with your campaign. If your campaign's not performing well and then you're not really hurting anything, and when you start over on Amazon, you get something called the benefit of the doubt. Tyler just did a video on it. It's part of our YouTube channel, I think. You can see it. Talks about the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt says that when the Amazon algorithm looks at something, it says, this is how you're performing. And when your campaign's performing like this, you go and make a bunch of changes. Guess how Amazon still thinks you perform? Like this. When you start over, Amazon says, I don't know how you're going to perform. And since they don't know how you're going to perform, they give you the benefit of the doubt. That's why when you start a new campaign, what happens to your impressions?
Skyrocket.
They skyrocket. And then a few days later, they come back down. You put 836 keywords in, your impressions all go high, nothing converts. They come back down really fast.
But if they convert?
If they start to convert and you have 1 or 2 or 5 keywords, then you start to add more keywords to it, right? So it's just different strategies, and don't be afraid to start over. I think that's a big point.
Never be worried to pivot. We've had clients that we think we have it set, we see it doesn't work, we pivot. It's fine. Like it's part of the process.
And the clients freak out. Why are we pivoting? What was wrong with the strategy before?
We got this.
Right. All right, questions. Yeah.
So we've done that granular approach in a different way. And in doing that, we've seen that the ad spend tends to get skewed normally to one particular ad group. So we have to build out campaigns for every product. Is there any way around that you found?
So when you say gets to
he's talking about his because he's doing granular with multiple ad groups within a campaign, so the budget's at the campaign level.
Yeah, so you can't break it out campaign by campaign if you want to control the budget more. We have seen that. We do that for some people too, because there's not a way to really budget at an ad group level, unfortunately. But that is like just because that maybe your top seller, and that's the one that Amazon's serving ads for the most, because it leads to the most conversions and the happiest customers. So that's why that happens. So, or actually just pull that one out into its own campaign.
Yeah, that's what I was
and
saying.
Keep the rest inside of that. Yeah.
Question? Nobody else? Yes, right here in the middle.
Do you do anything differently in terms of the ads, in terms of doing it as a sponsored versus a brand?
Like doing sponsored brand ads, or just like?
Yeah, where it's on the headlines versus like the normal sponsored.
Yeah, I mean, with the brands, they're different because it's a different type of data. Usually we just mimic the data from the sponsored product campaigns. That's where we kind of see how the setup should be, and it depends on how the client, especially which products they want to advertise, if they want to lead to a storefront or to like actually another list of products, we may do it differently. So that's just it depends because
And
it's always
and
dependent.
attribution's very different, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't sponsored brands or sponsored brands, you're not going to see the attribution at the individual ASIN level, so you have to do a little more guesstimating of
Yeah.
of all the products you're promoting versus sponsored ads,
But
where
that
you
is
can get more granular.
We're like, if we're doing the granular approach, we find out our top 3 performing ASINs, we may advertise those inside the sponsored brand ad as like the 3 advertised ones up top. So that way we know we're confident those can lead the most conversions possibly, but then kind of go from there and have it lead to a storefront most of the time because we love serving the storefronts. But we can talk about it more too.
One more question?
I can talk about what percentage of your sales should you devote towards advertising?
What percentage of sales should you devote towards advertisement? If I don't do that, it doesn't get on the recording.
That depends. Like overall sales? Like overall including advertising based on that. You just have to look at your tacos or your total
100%.
advertising. 100%?
100% of your total sales should be on advertising.
I know that's wrong.
Yeah.
But it really
Okay,
depends on your approach.
95.
Because a lot of our clients will have like a total advertising cost of sale goal that they have, which is showing how much of their spend is going into that. So I mean,
Right. So there's
It
two main,
depends.
just to make sure we're all on the same page, there's two main numbers that you can look at. One is your advertising cost of sale, which is the direct one-to-one relationship between the ad and the sale. And then the other is the advertising cost of product, or the total cost of advertising, which is looking at your advertising and your total sales.
right.
I think that, if you look at, the easy way to look at it is, for ACoS, it's going to depend on where your product is in the product lifecycle. Launching a product, you probably are higher. Commodity product, you might be a little lower. And we've seen those range from people who come to us at, they want 5% and they want 85%, right? We see the difference. Typically for the total advertising cost of product, we're seeing companies who are typically targeting anywhere from 5 to 15%. Again, depending on what they're trying to do with their business. So you do $1 million in sales, you're looking at a budget around $150K. And I always pick really easy numbers like that so I can do math on stage.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Doing a good job.
Great. So we're going to take a break. You guys have been sitting for a little while. There's no ice cream, or there's ice cream? Okay, so there's ice cream down at the far end, and I'll help you guys go on a hunt for ice cream. And then there's cookies and treats, and we've got till 3:30, so you've got a little bit of a longer break. Stretch your legs, go outside, get some fresh air. We're getting back here at 3:30 and starting prompt.